Hey guys, welcome back to my channel. Today I'm going to show you how to create this gorgeous Serape pattern using alcohol inks and your favorite vinyl pattern as your guide. We first want to start by matching our colors, and I've got like a test cup that I use to test my alcohol ink colors, and we're just going to dab a little bit of that color on and see how it reacts. I've prepped this test cup with the same flat white spray paint that we're going to be using on our tumbler today, so I know exactly how those paints are going to adhere to our base coat. Once I'm settled on the paint colors, we're going to get started on prepping our tumbler. I've already taped off the handle prongs and the bottom of my cup, and I've lightly sanded the areas that we're going to be painting and epoxying. If you need some help on prepping your cups or taping off the bottoms and why, I've got some beginner videos that I'm going to link down below in the description box that you might find helpful. I'm using Rustoleum 2x flat white spray paint for our base coat today. It's important to use a flat white spray paint for this type of application. Acrylic paint will not be ideal, unfortunately, for this type of look. Once we've got a nice even base coat and our paint is fully dry to the touch, we can get started. These are the type of paint brushes that I'm going to be using today, and I'm taping them to the bottoms of some 20-ounce skinny tumblers that I have available. The goal here is to hold our brushes steady while the cup turner turns our cup. Ideally, we would be working with a cup turner that has multi-direction switches and a 5 to 6 RPM motor. I think this one does have the faster 5 to 6 RPM motor, but it does not have the multi-directional switches, which kind of made a pain in the butt when I needed it to go opposite directions and stuff when I was trying to get around the handle. You can change the direction of this particular cup turner that I have. You just kind of have to force it or flip around the switches a few times, which was kind of annoying, but whatever. I worked with what I had. It still worked out. When we're putting the ink onto the cup, you're just going to drop a few drops of the ink onto the paintbrush, blot it onto your paper towel to make sure that you don't have too much ink, and then you're going to very carefully press the brush against the cup. Obviously, the harder you press the brush, the thicker the line, and the more ink, the more bolder the line's going to be, and the longer you keep the brush on there, the smoother it's going to be as well. So if your line first looks kind of shaky or wobbly, just keep your brush in the same spot for a little bit longer or move it slightly down, and it will smooth out that wobbly look. I hope that all makes sense. It's really important when we introduce the brush to the cup with the ink on it that we kind of start from the same place every time. Since I'm working with a handled cup, I'm starting at the handle each time I introduce that brush to the cup, just so I have a more uniform look about where all my colors start. It's also very important to note that your cup needs to be level on your cup turner. So to test that, you can place a level against the bottom of your cup, or you can just kind of observe how your cup turns while it's in motion. If it looks kind of wobbly, just adjust it until to your eye the cup looks like it's turning straight. Because if your cup is turning wobbly on the turner, your lines are going to turn wobbly from your brush. So just something to think about. Each time I move on to a new color, I place my vinyl against the cup just to kind of see as a roadmap what colors to use next, what the intensity should be. If I need to lessen the intensity of a certain color, I can dip it in some 91% rubbing alcohol, dab it on my paper towel, and then introduce that brush back onto the cup. The reason I had mentioned the cup turner speed earlier is with the faster cup turners, I feel like you get smoother lines. My old cup turners, I think, have 2 to 3 RPM motors, and those lines did not come out as smooth as these ones did with a faster cup turner. I will link the exact cup turner that I am using in the description box. I do find this very helpful. Even if you don't have steady hands, which I absolutely do not, I shake like a chihuahua. And if you've ever met me in person, you could probably notice that. So it's really hard for me to make a really straight line, and having the brushes taped to the cups makes it so easy. I did a Serape tutorial on the channel a couple months ago, and I will link that other one down below because I think I go pretty into depth with the brush placement in that video as well. I have parts of this video sped up a lot, so I'm not really working that quickly at all. This whole process took exactly 1 hour. Okay. Now, mind you, I was taking my time and I was filming certain scenes. So if I was to just do this on my own without filming it, I probably could get it done in a good half hour, maybe, especially if it's a pattern that I've done before. So this was a little bit of a labor of love. You can see how I moved around the handle. I had to start and stop the cut machine or the turner machine a lot, and then reposition my brush. Sometimes I skipped a stroke and I had to go back and fix it a little bit. It's okay. If your line messes up and you screw up, no big deal. Get a clean brush, dip it in some clean 91% rubbing alcohol, blot it on a paper towel, and then go back over that line a few times until you clean everything out and smooth it out. Let that alcohol dry and then try again. I also like to tape multiple brushes to one cup when I'm bouncing between two different colors. For example, on this one part, I was bouncing between orange and pink. So I think I had like 2 or 3 brushes taped to one cup, and I would just bounce between the different colors back and forth depending on where I needed to be based on our vinyl roadmap. And I know what some of you are thinking, why don't you just use the vinyl and wrap the cup? It would be so much easier. And yes, I know, but it wouldn't be as special. Also, I don't know if any of you have tried to wrap a 40-ounce handled tumbler before with vinyl, but it's very difficult. Also, I think my way is just prettier, so whatever. I did end up changing my mind on the green that I wanted kind of midway through here because I had a hard time matching the right shade. I thought I was decided on a shade when I did my color matching at the start, but you know how it is. I will end up listing and linking all the colors that I officially used down below in the description box. But here's a little time lapse of me completing this. I think you guys got the technique idea down. Now it's just repeating that same thing all the way down the cup, and again using that vinyl pattern as my guide. Of course, I don't need to use that vinyl pattern as my guide, but I loved it so much and I really wanted to recreate the boldness and look of those colors. Once we're done painting our Serape pattern, I'm going to let this dry for at minimum 12 hours before we move on to the next step. Now, certainly we could call it a day right here and be done with it, put some final coats of epoxy on and be done, but I'm going to really gild the lily here. I'm going to apply a very thin coat of epoxy. I'm using my fast curing epoxy for this. And once I've got everything nicely coated, again, very minimal, but I'm talking probably less than 10 milliliters of epoxy, we're going to be applying a gold glitter swirl. You have to be very careful with this because you only have one shot. If you mess up, you cannot fix it because those paints underneath this epoxy are not sealed. And I don't recommend sealing them with anything because it can change the color of the ink sometimes. So just be very careful here on this step. The reason we want a very thin layer of epoxy is so that glitter does not move once it's been applied. We're using the epoxy as glitter adhesive today. If you work better with a different kind of glitter adhesive, go ahead and use that, but maybe just do a test patch first to see how that glue could potentially affect your inks first, because again, you only get one shot at this. If you mess it up, it's over after all that hard work with the Serape. I'm going to be glittering our swirl very carefully here over some parchment paper. Today I'm using Rain from Batty Glitters. You can find the link and a discount code for this down below in the description box. And I'm going to start with what I call the rough draft of my swirl, just swirling on very lightly. I want the top and bottom of that swirl to be visible from the same side as the cup. And keep in mind kind of where your swirl placement's going to be in relation to any kind of decals or names you might want to place on the cup. Once I've got the shape and placement of my swirl established, I could start building some coverage around it and the thickness of that swirl. You can make the thickness of the swirl however you like. Just keep in mind this is how much room we have to apply our leopard spots. So if you want more leopard spots, make a bigger swirl. If you want less, make a smaller swirl. Once I applied my glitter, I'm going to put it on my turner to dry, and I'm going to remove my tape from the bottom and the handle prongs. It's important to put it on the turner to dry so that the glitter doesn't shift down while it's drying. Once that epoxy is fully dry, I'm ready to move on to the next step. I am going to be applying my UV DTF decal now. I probably should have waited till later. Remember, you only have one very, very thin coat of epoxy over that alcohol ink. So if you apply your UV DTF decal at this step, be careful not to pull up any of your epoxy. That can easily be done because these carrier sheets are very, very sticky. So I would just caution you. Again, if you wanted to wait till later, you totally can. I was just being impatient. I also like to temporarily put the handle back on at this stage. Number one, just to see if the handle can go back on, make sure I'm not messing that up, and that the decal looks great in relation to the handle. I'm going to measure twice, so I only have to apply this once. And I kind of like to use the hinge method. Some people say not to do this, but I just get so nervous that it's not going to be straight, so that's why I do that. Once I've got my decal applied, I'm going to start painting on my rosettes for my leopard spots using KGD's One Coat Wonder adhesive. I've got just a cheap paintbrush here, and I'm going to be painting on just random spots here and there, making sure I don't have them on perfectly. We don't want them perfectly spaced, just kind of space them out randomly if you have a pattern in mind or some kind of reference you can look at that might help. Once I've got a few spots painted on, I'm going to sprinkle on my glitter. Today I'm using Empress from Batty Glitters. After applying my glitter, I'm going to aggressively tap off the excess. Here's what we should be left with. I'm also going to brush off any excess glitter with a clean, dry brush. And we can pull up any excess glitter with a piece of tape. The benefit of using the adhesives that I use to apply the glitter is that we don't need to seal them. They're not going anywhere. That glitter is stuck where it is. If it does stray just a little bit, it's okay because of the kind of ombre effect that we did with the swirl. It's not going to matter if we have some strays here and there, but truly the glitter will stay right where it's at because of how we applied it. Once those rosettes are fully dry to the touch, we can apply a coat of epoxy. I've got 60 milliliters of my fast cure here, And with the turner off, I'm going to pay special attention around those handle prongs. You'll notice I replaced my tape for the bottom and the handle prongs on this coat. Once I've got everything coated evenly, I'm going to hit this with my torch to pop any bubbles, and then I go ahead and remove my tape right away and wipe off any excess epoxy if necessary. I'm going to let this dry for about 4 hours before we move on to the next step. Remember, your dry times may vary based on the type and brand of epoxy that you're using. Next, we're going to hand paint the black part of our leopard spots using a fine point Posca acrylic paint marker. I'm going to be just kind of scribbling these in, and I want all of my scribbled lines to go in kind of the same direction. This is going to make kind of a sweeping effect with my spots, so they look like they're all in line with the swirl. I'm also going to paint in some other little random spots outside of the rosettes that we glittered earlier to kind of balance everything out, and I also like it as a beautiful little detail. I'm also going to sign my name and date my cup like I usually do. And once we're done with that painting, we can finally move on to our final coats of epoxy. Before I apply my final coat of epoxy today, I just want to clean everything up with a tack cloth. This is just a basic linseed tack cloth. I've been using these for years, and it makes my life a lot easier to get all that lint and debris off. This will not interfere with your epoxy. If it does, that means that you were pushing too hard. You shouldn't be depositing any of the oils from that tack cloth onto your cup. But it's a great way to get all of the lint and debris off for great final coats. With the motor of my turner off, I'm going to go around those handle prongs very carefully. Once again, make sure everything nice and smooth. You'll notice that I don't have my tape on for this final coat, especially down at the bottom, and that's because I'm going to be bringing my epoxy all the way down past my original tape line to create the final seal for our tumbler. Once I've got everything coated nice and smooth, I'm going to hit it with my torch to pop any bubbles, and then I'm going to come over with some rubbing alcohol and paper towel to remove any excess epoxy. And now we'll let this dry. To speed things along a bit, I'm going to be using my drying box that I got from RESINERS. I have to put this up on some risers. Those are just some cup arm holders that I've had laying around my shop. And I'm just going to very carefully fit this in over my cup. There's an opening on the back there, and I'm going to plug it in and run the cycle. It will automatically turn off, but this is going to cut my dry time in half, you guys. You can see on my watch that I'm just under 4 hours. This is with my Artist Cure epoxy. Normally, we'd be looking at 6 to 8 hours before we can get the results that we're looking for here. It's completely pettable. At this point, if I wanted to put the handle back on and be done with it, I could. Of course, we do still want to let this cure for a full 24 hours before we wash it and mess around with it or give it to somebody. But that's it for this tutorial. If you want to check out that RESINERS drying box thing, I'm going to link it down below in the description box. I really like it just because it saves me a lot of time. I'm usually in a hurry when I'm filming tutorials. Surprise, surprise. But I love this cup. I love how it turned out. Let me know what you guys thought in the comments. And if you haven't already, please subscribe to my channel. I upload new videos every week, or at least when I have time. Thank you. If you love that last video, you can check out the next one here, and be sure to follow us on Facebook, Instagram, and TikTok for more great content. You can shop our products at FlynnSistersSupplyShop.com and subscribe to our channel for new videos every week. Thanks so much for watching, and we'll see you again soon.